Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Tweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome, guys, to another daily download where we're going to be going through the most current, most up-to-date Arsenal news and transfer news. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about again today. Yesterday, two shows that I did. I was like, oh, I wonder if this is overkill, but there were so many people wanting to talk about different things, so um it was good. But today, I don't know, it might be mixed, because this is more, I feel like, of an outgoing show. Um Outgoings kind of mixed with an incoming or two. So it'll be a little bit less exciting, I think, because we'll be talking about people leaving, hopefully, and some not leaving. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Let's see who's in the chat. Happily Egg says, sorry, Jess, I can't stick around. Very busy. Only came to give my thumbs up. I really appreciate that. Happily Eggs. Josh, exclamation point, says, this is depressing. Him staying. C. Wilder says, I've been busy all day. News me up. Lucas says, oh, you guys are talking to each other. Hakum says, I just don't understand how there's fans that think he's good enough. This isn't going to push us forward. Amira says, hey, Jess and chat. Hello to you as well. And Tope says, hello, Jess. How are you? Or hope you're good. I am good. I can't complain. I just enjoy doing these shows with you guys. So, I have nothing to complain about. Diallo says, big up, everyone. It's been a while. Hope y'all are well. Let's go. So, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. There's about 70 of you guys already here. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. This is obviously not what we're talking about. Okay. So, first story is Nketiah. Is ready to stay, but over the last couple of maybe 10 minutes or so, David Ornstein has come out and a couple of different journalists and have confirmed that Eddie Nketiah is going to sign a new contract with Arsenal. He has made a U-turn essentially and wants to stay. So this is coming from David Ornstein. Eddie Nketiah understood to have changed his mind on leaving Arsenal. 22-year-old striker was set to go on a free agent, but now is expected to sign a new contract. Deal not finalized, but duration is likely to be up to 5 years. So this news has kind of come, I think, with some divisive opinions around it. I said yesterday that I don't want Nketiah to stay. I want us to move him on. Allow these players that are going to go on a free to go. It's the easiest way to let a player go is to let them go on a free. And Arteta and the club, for a long time, we've known that they were kind of desperate to make this work and to keep Nketiah here. And until the last couple of games, I do think the overarching opinion on Nketiah was he needs to go, where we want him to move on. Over the last couple of games, probably starting with the game against Chelsea, the narrative around him has changed. And I don't think that it's changed with the club because ultimately they have been working on getting Nketiah to sign a new deal for a long time. And there's been a deal on the table for a long time, but he never wanted to sign it. From reports, it was a mixture of he wasn't sure he was going to get the playing time that he wanted, and he also wanted a certain amount of money attached to that deal. So, Arsenal gave him a run of games and he showed what he could do. And now he's changed his mind and he wants to stay. If I had to guess, I think that it's probably a combination of us having European football that he can play games in, and also the fact that we were willing to go up to the salary that he wanted. We were willing to pay him what he wanted, and that was the difference between him going or staying. As we know, a couple of his moves have broken down. One to Brighton, I think, and one to Crystal Palace. They've broken down because of the wages that he wanted. So it was going to be difficult for him, somebody who doesn't have a long CV and not a lot really to go off of, to command 100,000 per week from these other clubs, but he's going to get it from Arsenal. So fair play to him. This is just something that just I guess I won't understand unless I see something else. Like, I just don't think I don't think I'm gonna be able to understand it because I am very kind of I'm feeling like if Nketiah has said that he wants to stay, it's because he's been guaranteed minutes as well. And those guaranteed minutes are gonna come if our main striker gets injured, who we don't know who our main striker is gonna be just yet, or in the Europa League or group stages of the cups. And for me, it's just like, do I trust that if our main striker is unable to play, that Eddie Nketiah is going to be the right person to lead the line? And so I don't know. I don't know if he is. Um, so that here we are though. I mean, he's basically signed a new deal up to 5 years, and you know, I just hope that they know what they're doing because ultimately this is their um they have to fall on the sword if this doesn't work out. And there's a lot of Arsenal fans that are like, well, he may be the number 3. I don't think Nketiah is going to sign a new deal with Arsenal to be the number 3. He'll probably be the number 2, and that's who we're going to be relying upon when things don't go right. Now, how do you guys feel about it? Because do you guys feel like Nketiah has earned this and he's shown you guys enough? Or do you feel like there's still some questions? Yesterday, when I was speaking to Souls about this, I kind of gave both sides. You know, there's a side that you don't feel like he's good enough, and we've seen long enough what we think his level is, and his level is not up to the standard of Arsenal. And then there's the other side where it's like, if he was somebody else and he didn't belong to us, but he was putting up the numbers in the short period of time like he has, would we be drooling over him? My example yesterday was Broja. Broja has like 6 goals in 30 something appearances this season. Eddie Nketiah has like 5 goals and an assist in a couple of appearances. So, and Arsenal fans love Broja and wanted Broja to come to the club. So is it just a matter of he's somebody that we know and we have a narrative in our head around who he is, and maybe that's not actually who he is. He could be better. I think right now at 22, he could become anything. He could be end up being a really, really good striker, or he could just be average. You know, you don't really know yet. But I would say in my like where I am right now is I'm very worried with this. If it was me, I would let him go for free and buy 2 new strikers. But on the other hand, it might be the it might be good financially for us to re-sign Eddie Nketiah, only have to buy 1 striker, and then bring in a big signing to play on the wing. For me, that's kind of the only way that this makes sense. For me, this is the only way that this makes sense, and I would feel comfortable is if he was the backup. We still brought in Jesus or something like that, and we brought in a star left winger. You know, somebody that's really going to move the needle, somebody that people don't expect us to be able to get, but because we have, you know, saved money on having to buy another striker, we can push a lot of money towards that big signing. So, you know, that's the only way that this makes sense for me, but it just kind of feels like this is something that Arteta really wanted and they gave it to him, and it's his funeral, you know, because this is how this is at Arsenal Football Club, you have to expect the worst. And if the worst happens and we sign, let's say Gabriel Jesus, and he gets injured early on in the season, this is the person you're going to be relying upon to score your goals. And if you don't like actually like if you got a little shiver down your spine, then you're also not convinced that he's the right person. Yo-Yo says Jess is saying Neymar Jr. folks. Saida says I don't understand this because he wasn't even starting over Lacazette. In fact, the only reason he started getting any minutes is because Laka got ill. This screams unambitious to me. Newman says Nketiah's career at Arsenal is 1 goal and 6. He's an 8-goal a season striker. Reggie says, I feel that he's going to have to prove it to fans because clearly Arteta is seeing something that we aren't. We also thought Ramsdale was crap signing as well. And like, I do hear that aspect of things. The difference between Ramsdale and Nketiah, and it's kind of like what you said, is that we know Nketiah, we've seen him. It's not like he hasn't been here. And what he's kind of been is a striker that does well when we play against lower level opposition, but when he had to step up to the bigger games, he kind of went anonymous. Now, that kind of changed a little bit when we were playing against Chelsea and playing against Man United, but he was also playing for a move or playing for a contract. And we know players are much different when they're playing for things like money, new contract, higher wages. So, I mean, knowing how players play once they get big contracts at Arsenal, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some drop off, but ultimately, again, this is up to Arteta and Adu and stuff, because if this doesn't work out, this is going to look really bad. Lucas says a couple of factors, 5 subs. He is quite versatile and he can play a lot in Europa League and domestic cups and be a backup in the league. He is growing into his body. Priceless Truth says Nketiah scores 5 goals in 10 games. Seawalder says, hasn't Eddie scored 5 in 20 if you look at the whole season? Yeah, I think the difference between, the other games is that, if they're Premier League games, we know he was coming in with like 5 minutes to go. Like if you look at, the game against Everton, he only had a couple of minutes, and he missed that header. So game state also plays a part in that. But when he got a run of games and he was starting, he did pretty well. But I get what you guys are saying about he had more appearances than just the 5. This is the time that he got a start and had 90 minutes to play, which I think it does make a difference, because when he was starting against like Sunderland and stuff, he did score. So in general, when Eddie got 60 to 90 minutes to play, he probably scored a goal. When he came in at the end of games and only had a couple of minutes, he didn't do as well. S says, I thought everyone started to like Eddie. Lion Knight says, good business. We can spend more on a top striker. I guess my question around that is, then, if you have Eddie Nketiah and it looks like we're going to sign Gabriel Jesus, then is that enough for you, in terms of the striker situation centrally? Is that enough? I know a lot of us are I know for me, I would prefer have we had let Eddie go and bring in somebody that's taller and has more aerial presence and also got Gabriel Jesus, because I think that's the right spread. I don't think Eddie Nketiah and Gabriel Jesus are the same, but in terms of stature and height, they are the same. They're the same like that. But obviously, Gabriel Jesus is a much different player than Eddie Nketiah. So I think if those are the two strikers that you bring in, you kind of don't have that ability to bring in a taller, more physical presence to put in the box. I don't think Eddie is going to be a threat to the likes of like Liverpool and teams with big, strong, confident central defenders. So it's a little bit like, is that enough? Is Gabriel Jesus and Nketiah enough for our center forwards, moving forward? Tope says, no more excuses of our squad not being good enough since we have handed new deals to Holding, Xhaka, Elneny, and now Nketiah. We are primed for a 7th to 8th place finish. These deals don't push us forward. Now, again, I hear what you're saying, and they are underwhelming. I'd rather we just let all of these fringy guys go and move on from them, because I don't want to see them anymore at Arsenal, and they're not good enough. But the transfer window is not over, so I wouldn't say we're primed for a 7th to 8th finish, because Elneny and Holding, who we probably will never see play very many games, are still at Arsenal. So I understand the frustration, but like, if I believe that that's all we're going to do in this window, then yeah, but like, we will bring in other players. Diallo says our fan base is so dismissive. Remember, Eddie was our best striker in preseason. All he needed was an opportunity. The kid is good. Would be a shame if we lose him at such a young age. Goals equals priceless. Arnolito says also makes sense. So clubs don't ask us for more money since they know we have no strikers. Ishmael says, I don't think we can get to at 60 million plus without Champions League. That's why we're keeping Eddie, I think. Again, financially, if you just look at it from a financial standpoint, it does kind of make sense to keep Eddie so that you could spend more money elsewhere. But again, I'd expect that money that we would have been using on another striker to be shifted over to a left wing. I think we need more attack. I think we need to ensure that we have goals in this team. And the only way that you can do that is by spending more money on a winger. It says we're not going to spend over 45 million on two strikers in one summer. Let's be realistic. Lucas says Eddie is a poacher. Poacher. Jesus is a constant runner. They're so different to me that like I don't really buy into the same profile. They're just not. So, it's just a matter of like we don't have a tall physical striker, which I kind of felt like we would go after. Olivier says if you get Oshiman or Nunez with Eddie, it's okay. Dial Square says anyone happy with Eddie staying just shows the level of this once great club. Yo-Yo says City are the standard. They don't have a DCL, neither do Pool. You know what? I do hear what you're saying, Yo-Yo, and like sometimes I do think that as well. Like the two best teams in the country for the last like 5-6 seasons haven't had a striker over the height of 5'9" or 5'10". So you don't actually need it. Of course, City are now getting Holland, but they're in a different, space and, now in their progression. So they're going to bring in something different. But maybe it's true, we don't actually need that strong physical striker. I just felt like we would go after one. Lucas says Eddie is a poacher. Oh, yeah, you said that already. Oh, I read that already. Let's see. Orpheus Jones says, I don't like retaining Nketiah. I wanted Jesus to be our versatile forward plus a center forward. But with Eddie staying, I feel like we do need a pure number 9. I don't like Jesus, Nketiah, Saka. Well, Nketiah will be a backup. He's not going to start every game. So it would be most likely Saka, Jesus, and somebody else. And so knowing that, we can kind of move on to the next topic of discussion, which is going to be Gnabry. So now I kind of already alluded to this. Because I think it goes hand in hand with this whole idea that like we should keep Eddie Nketiah. So Christian Falk, who's really close to like German football and German, the German teams, is saying that we are interested in Gnabry. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my my thing together. So that we're interested in Gnabry. He says Arsenal are interested in Serge Gnabry. Gnabry can also imagine a comeback with the Gunners after missing the Champions League. This is financially unrealistic this summer. Next chance in 2023 when Serge will be a free agent. So this represents what I think would be an acceptable solution for re-signing Eddie Nketiah. If you were to bring Tielemans, Gnabry, and Gabriel Jesus, then I feel like, yeah, you have upped the quality of this team. But if it's just Gabriel Jesus and Tielemans, you're a player short because you didn't bring in a big number 9 signing per se. So I do think that if they just do this with Nketiah and Gabriel Jesus, they kind of need to push for something like this. I know that, Christian Falk is kind of assuming here that we don't have the money, but like realistically, you've gotten rid of Aubameyang and Lacazette, and both of them were on Bumming, it was on like 200 and something grand a week. Lacazette was on 180 grand a week. Serge is on 130 grand a week right now, and he probably wants something closer to 200. This, I would give him 200 grand per week. This is the type of player that you spend those types of wages on. And right now, it looks like his only other option is Real Madrid. And I know that's a difficult team to go up against, but this is the type of player that you bring in. If you re-sign Eddie Nketiah, you don't re-sign Eddie Nketiah and then bring in another kid on the left wing. It doesn't up the levels. And Gabriel Jesus is not enough. And Serge has the type of experience and the goal tally and the physical and athletic ability to play in the Premier League and take us to another level. This would show that Arsenal are being serious to me. If they act like they don't have the money, that's a fabrication. Like, you can't just get Gabriel Jesus and Tielemans and then say you don't have any more money, or you don't have the wages when you've gotten rid of Lacazette and Aubameyang. They do have the money. I know they're saying like, oh, well, after Champions League, it's financially unrealistic, but if Bayern Munich were going to lose him for free, offer 55 million, and see what you can do. But this is something that I feel like it would be nice if we could get done. But if it's just like wait until next season to get him on a free, what are you going to do this season? What are you going to do this season? You cannot just bring in Gabriel Jesus, re-sign Nketiah, and bring Tielemans. That's not good enough. Miles says, don't think Gnabry is the type of signing Arteta is looking at. Well, what kind of signing do you think he's looking at? Belichick says, what's your competition for Gabriel Jesus in terms of who else is going after him? Pretty much nothing. Like, beyond Spurs having some sort of interest, I think Gabriel Jesus is going to pretty much be our player. Yo-Yo says, Gnabry, Jesus, Saka sounds more fun than serious. ESR, Eddie Martinelli can hold bench. Yeah, I'm just more like, and I know that people are so like, they are kind of afraid that like if you were to bring in like a top quality winger, then you're blocking the paths of Martinelli and ESR. But if they're good enough, they'll play. Like, they're 20 years old. We don't need to be holding space for them in the starting lineup when they don't contribute the goals that we need. So I think you do need to bring in a top quality player, and I'm all for Gakpo, who I think ultimately like are, I'm all for Gakpo, and I do think that he's a really good player, and if he were to come in, I do think he's quality, but he's coming from the Eredivisie, and we know that it takes players a while to adapt to the Premier League, and so will we get the goals necessary from him as well? Like, I just feel like if it's just Nketiah and Gabriel Jesus, that's so disappointing, and only a signing like this would change my mind that it's not disappointing. Reggie Perry says, Jess, I haven't heard anything about Arsenal reducing their budget because of missing Champions League. I think people were saying that, but it may mean extra players instead of changes to their plans. Diallo says Martinelli is here to stay. He just got the number 11. I don't think he's going to leave. I'm just saying if he's good enough, he'll play. I don't think we need to worry about blocking his path or anything like that. Lucas says, I'm sorry, but we are going nowhere with only Gabby and ESR on the wings. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, the difference between us making top four and not was the quality and that experience that Spurs had up top. And so the idea that like all of a sudden Martinelli and Saka and Nketiah and ESR can take us to the promised land next season is a farce. You need to bring better players in. Selection, thank you so much for your super chat, says, I think Poole go for Gakpo if Mane rumors are true. Maybe, but if Mane goes and he'll go to Bayern, then that means that we could try to go after Serge Gnabry. Gakpo also Gakpo plays left wing, and I don't know where that Fabio Carvalho is going to be playing. Who knows what Liverpool will do, but I don't really care what Liverpool are doing. I think we need to push to get our best options. If Gakpo is our number one option, we need to figure out a way to get him. I know also Gakpo wants to start, and he's not starting over um what's his name, guys? Luis Diaz. Like, he's not starting over him. So there's that. But the way that Arsenal convinced Eddie Nketiah to stay and gave him the money necessary to keep him, I want to see that same energy for the players that are really going to move the needle. We did a lot of convincing and a lot of talking and a lot of loving on Eddie Nketiah. I kind of want to see the same um, for players that we really want. I know Arteta really wanted him, but he needs to do that with players that we really need as well. Um, Yo-Yo says exactly, if they're good enough, they'll play. Cesc and RVP got to play with ballers at Highbury and benefited from it at the Emirates. Let's see. Bradley says, what about Bundesliga tax? Gnabry and his best season is worse than Sancho's at Dortmund, and look how he's been over 200K in wages on him when Mars, Sterling, and Mane were all available is a risk. What I'll say about that is that there are players that come from the Bundesliga that don't flop. I think it's all about, how you come in and the type of structure and the system that you're playing. And I don't know, like Timo Werner, do you really say that that's Bundesliga tax, or was he just not that good of a player? We know Gnabry is a quality player. We've seen him play against Premier League opposition. We know he's a quality player. I think Bundesliga tax, we use that because there's been players that have been overblown and they've spent a lot of money on them that actually weren't that good. Timo Werner actually wasn't that good. Sancho is a quality player. He's playing in a really bad Man United team under very suspect management. And so I wouldn't be surprised if next season Sancho had a really good season. I don't think he's flopped. I think he's just in a bad situation. Now, if Sancho got to Liverpool and flopped, then I would be like, yeah, that's Bundesliga. Like, the Bundesliga is really, really bad. But I think that only really applies because we've seen players, like there's players that come from the Dutch league that some of them do good and some of them don't. I think it's just a matter of recruitment, to be honest. Let's see. Miles says Gnabry is a big player with a big personality. Don't think Arteta wants that. We've seen how he's struggled with the more senior players in his tenure. Well, he also I get that. I understand that. But Gnabry is the same age, like pretty much the same age as Gabriel Jesus. I think he might be 1 year older. So I think it's about, are these players that he brought in, do they align with his thought process? I'm not sure that it's just like big players with big personalities. I think, Aubameyang is somebody who's always kind of had issues with managers. So can we really say it was just Arteta, or maybe it was just that's how Aubameyang is? He didn't have any issues with Lacazette per se, and Lacazette was an older player. Who did he really have issues with? Ozil. Ozil has went to Fenerbahce and fallen out with that manager as well. He also fell out with Ancelotti. That's why Ancelotti got rid of him at Real Madrid. So these players had repeat offenses. I'm not really sure if it's Arteta doesn't like big players with big personality. I think he wants players that buy into the vision, and I think that's more important. Maybe Gnabry would. Blaze says, Jess, who will replace Pepe when he leaves Arsenal? Gakpo or Arteta will keep faith in ESR and Martinelli. We have got to buy a winger this summer. I am not if we don't get it, I will be pissed. I really will, because Pepe, if he goes, you can't rely upon Martinelli and ESR. It's the same issue that we had last season. If you play Gabriel Jesus and then you just have Saka and Martinelli or ESR, we're going to have the exact same issue than we had this season. You get a couple of injuries or somebody goes through bad form and boom, you don't have any goals in your team. They have got to get a left winger, in this side, a winger, another goal scoring forward, something. So I don't know. It's just, if they don't get it, I'll be very disappointed, because we don't have enough goals. Like, we don't have enough goals in this team as it stands. So Gnabry would be a good option for that. If they don't get Gnabry, I think they'll go after Gakpo again. It it only will really work if he can hit the ground running, which I'm afraid maybe he won't because he'll be coming from the Dutch league. She Knows Football, thank you so much for your super chat. So yeah, it's one of those where I would like to see us push for a higher quality player if we just have Nketiah as the backup. But yeah, um, that's all I really have on that. So moving on to some more, maybe not so. It depends on who you are. There are a lot of Arsenal fans that think that this is a really clever move, but Mo Elneny has signed a 1-year extension with Arsenal Football Club. I think we kind of already knew that this was happening. They just wanted to find a good time to announce it. Mo, like Nketiah, did really well in the run-in until they didn't. When it really mattered, when we were playing against Newcastle and Spurs, they didn't do anything. But when we were playing those games into the lead up, they did all right. And a lot of Arsenal fans changed their tune on him, even to the extent of his high points in the season were better than Thomas Partey's, or somehow he can do a similar job to Thomas Partey. He can't. But this is the issue with Arsenal Football Club. I just think that, like, he's a backup type guy and he's been around for a very long time and he's definitely not going to take us forward. If anything, we're just going to be in the same spot with him. But there has to be somebody in between Thomas Partey and him. Like, Thomas Partey is going to get injured next season. We know that it's just going to happen. So if that's the case, do you really trust your season to Mo Elneny? Do you trust Champions League again to Mo Elneny? And so for me, it's more about, okay, if you're going to have him for one season, which isn't a bad thing, like, it won't kill me, there has to be somebody else coming in. It can't just be we're just re-signing all these guys and not bringing anybody in. A transfer window of Gabriel Jesus, Tielemans, and a fullback and a left-sided center back is a terrible, terrible window for Arsenal Football Club. They need more than one midfielder, especially if they bring in one striker. More than one midfielder and a winger have got to come in. You don't just get to have a nothing window and re-sign these really average Joes. Elneny is the definition of average. When you look up average in the dictionary, Mo Elneny's smiling face is there. He is not like anything like Thomas Partey. And the level drops off massively when you have to put him in the game. So I do respect the idea that he probably has a lot to give in terms of the locker room and being this nice guy. And, he's not going to push for playing time. But we have to figure out a way where he's not going to be getting a lot of playing time. And that only comes if they bring in another central midfielder. It's just not enough. Like, it just isn't. And you can't go into next season with just Tielemans as the only player that you add to that midfield group. Because if you take away Thomas Partey out of that group for a significant amount of time, what you're telling me is that, again, you're trusting your season to Granit Xhaka and Mo Elneny. And ultimately, having them in the team, having Nketiah in the team, having Cedric in the team, having Tavares playing large amounts of minutes, having Holding playing a lot of minutes, it really derailed our season. So yeah, like, the whole nice guy thing doesn't do anything for me. I knew that this was coming, so I'm not like about to, punch somebody in the face or anything like that about it. But it just feels like if you're going to take these steps to secure average players in the team as our backups, then you better have a plan for really making that first 11 or that first 13 really, really good. There has to be a trade-off for this. There's 300 of you guys in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Saida says, I've seen enough of Elneny in the past 5 years. It's been like 7 years as well. Like, he's been here for 7 years, but I hear you, to know he isn't good enough. A couple of good games has fooled most of the fans into thinking he's somehow improved and is reliable. Facts. Paul Hill says he will play Europa early rounds in the League Cup. Again, like we struggled through the group stages of the Europa League, like a lot, not this past season, but the season prior, because these like rotational guys are just not good enough. Brisbane says, I agree with you, Jess. We'll bring in a better midfielder than Xhaka. I mean, we'll probably bring in Tielemans, but we need another holding midfielder that is better than Elneny to keep us from having. I mean, and then what happens with Lokonga? This is why this really worries me that this signifies one midfielder. You know, re-signing him means we have him, Xhaka, and Lokonga as holding midfield backups for Thomas Partey. Numbers wise, we shouldn't be able to bring anybody else in. That's too many holding midfielders, you know, even with a team that's going to be playing in 4 competitions. And we really need a more attacking 8, which Tielemans would do. But the quality of the backups is what worries me. The quality of Elneny, Xhaka, and Lokonga is just not up to the standard when you have a player like Thomas Partey who really carries the midfield when he's in there, and you know he's going to get injured. So I think they've done this so that they don't have to bring in another midfielder beyond Tielemans. Then they also re-sign Nketiah so that they don't have to bring in 2 strikers. But what is the trade-off for that? Gabriel Jesus and Tielemans together is only going to cost you 75 million. So if you have 150 to spend, what are you going to spend the rest of your that money on? You know, it has to be players that are going to bring up the levels. And that's why I said a real like top quality winger would really go a long way to restoring my faith in this group, this hierarchy. Lionide says, can we get a good CM that is not injury prone? Partey is not fitted for the Premier League. Look, I hear that some people are not happy with Thomas Partey or whatever, but do I think like our biggest issue is that Thomas Partey is injury prone, or do I think a bigger issue is that Elneny and Xhaka and Lokonga are there to back him up? I think I'm more concerned about Xhaka and Elneny being the backups than Thomas Partey being injury prone, because as a team that feels like they should be in the Champions League, they should have somebody else there anyway. And I don't see many, like Liverpool are going to probably, they missed out on Tchouaméni, which they were going to bring in Tchouaméni to play with and back up Jordan Henderson and Fabinho. You know, that's what good teams do. They don't just have one good player, so when they get injured, that's it. So, and they're looking at Sangare now as another option. So why are we not doing something similar? Why are we sitting around with Xhaka and Elneny instead of making sure we have suitable backup? You know, like I think Thomas Partey wouldn't be as injured as much if we didn't need him every time he stepped off of a plane from Africa. I think continuing to play him like that is hurting him. Let's see. Olivier says, anyone thought Lokonga Ford in the last game looked better than Lokonga Lone DM? Yeah, because we weren't having a heart attack. Lokonga as that lone 6, he's not ready for it. Physically, his positioning, it's just not there, you know, so it's just not there yet. So yeah, because you weren't having a heart attack every 5 minutes when he was getting the ball, right? But yeah, he did look better there. Abadoon says, trust Arteta's ball knowledge over your opinions. Well, you're the one who's watching my show. You know, you're one of the 350 here watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you guys want to keep listening to my opinions. It says, Partey got injured in preseason by a tackle, by the way, by Loftus-Cheek. Yes, I remember that. It was terrible. And it was like not a preseason-like tackle. He was very much trying to like show Tuchel that he had what it took. And in the process, he like bowled into Thomas Partey's ankle. So I do remember that. It wasn't that he was just walking and he turned his ankle. He was hurt. So yeah, I do remember that. Of course I remember that. I do remember that. Um, so yeah, next. So the next thing I wanted to speak on is that apparently Arsenal are still in contact with Bissouma's entourage. The deal would be about 30 million, and just kind of piggybacking off of the last conversation, you guys see I have a plan. I have a plan. Everything goes together, and it's just like the conversation just rolls. You know what I mean? But kind of piggybacking off of the last conversation is we need to bring in another midfielder. I don't think Arsenal will do it because again, Elneny and Xhaka staying and also having Lukanga says to me, this is what we're going to go with if Thomas Partey goes down injured. We've seen what it's like. It's not great. The quality goes down, but I think that's what Arsenal are willing to do. But Arsenal are still in contact with Bissouma and his entourage. The deal would be 30 million, but Aston Villa are leading the race, whatever that means. So I think that they probably maybe sounded out the club and actually spoke to spoke to Brighton. And we just contacted, the agent to see what the wages would be like, the terms and all that kind of stuff. But when we talk about and here's the thing about Bissouma before we even get started in on the conversation, because I don't even have to look at the chat box to know that somebody's probably already said that. Well, what about the case? What about, the case that he has against him? For me personally, you are innocent until proven guilty. Until he's proven guilty and not just under investigation, I won't say for sure that he's some sort of, he's guilty for the crime that he's been investigated over. So we are speaking purely off of, the assumption that he'll be, cleared of those charges. And that would be sometime in June that's going to be cleared up whether or not, he's guilty or not. So just speaking about it from that perspective, that we don't know whether he's guilty or not. This makes all the sense of the world for Arsenal if we were serious, because if you look at Aston Villa, they were the only Premier League club, I think, that were willing to pay Boubacar Kamara 140 grand per week. But I also think Arsenal would have been smart to do the same, because Boubacar Kamara is a better player than Mo Elneny. And if Thomas Partey were to go down injured, I would feel confident that somebody like Boubacar Kamara could step in. He can also play center back as well. Like, he's a really good quality player. But nobody was going to pay those wages. I think we probably should have, but we didn't do it because he's a free signing. But Aston Villa are also looking to bring in Bissouma, and that makes sense because if the top clubs are a little bit apprehensive about bringing in Bissouma because of whatever's hanging over his head, then Aston Villa would be in a good position to scoop a player that is definitely of top 4 quality but may not get picked up, and for a decent fee because he's within 1 year of his contract, which is exactly what we're doing with Gabriel Jesus, exactly what we're doing with Yuri Tielemans. And so I don't really understand, beyond the idea that maybe he's guilty or whatever, why we wouldn't actually go for Bissouma. But this is the type of player that we're missing in our midfield. So whether it's him or somebody else, we are missing this player in midfield. When we go away to Crystal Palace, when we go to Brighton, when we go away to Newcastle, we get bullied in midfield. And that's with Xhaka in it, and I see a lot of people saying, well, Xhaka has physicality. I don't actually think he helps us that much with physicality. I think he helps us keep the ball and helps us keep control. And he does win some duels. But when we talk about a play like intensity and being able to compete, and when teams decide, this is the old Arsenal, let's just beat them up and then they'll stop playing, this type of player would stop teams from even trying to do it. And there would be at times where you need a Bissouma, Thomas Partey, Odegaard midfield, where you have more of that steel and physicality and athleticism over the control, because you need to be able to compete or you're not going to have the ball as much. So whether it's Bissouma or not, this is the type of player that we need in our midfield. Aston Villa have Ramsey and Coutinho and that McGinn person, and then they're going to try to get Bissouma and Boubacar Kamara. And they already have Douglas Luiz. Having good players in midfield is not stopping them from adding more quality. I'm sorry, but Arsenal's inability and lack of prioritization of the midfield is so frustrating, considering that's where we've been weak for like the last 7 years. I'd like to see this get addressed, especially if you guys are re-signing the likes of Elneny and, Nketiah, then there should be money left over to bring in another midfielder. And I know that's a lot of midfielders, but like at a certain point, Elneny and Lakanga and Xhaka are not going to be able to take us where we want to go next season. So, yeah. And I've said this a couple times on streams, and I just have this weird feeling that Aston Villa will get Bissouma. They'll put the money down, and the player that will be available for us for this position will be Douglas Luiz, and that's who we might go after. He's within the last year of his contract as well. If Aston Villa are looking to bring in Boubacar Kamara and Bissouma, that says pretty much the end of Douglas Luiz at Aston Villa as far as I'm concerned. And because of that player's ties to Arteta and Edu through Kia, don't count that one out. Let's see. S says Party is a one-man midfield. He is. Tope says we have been weak in DM for like 10 years. S says I've been saying midfield is our weakness. I mean, it's obvious it's our weakness, isn't it? Ioha God's Time says I want Bissouma. It will be a good addition for the team. Yo-Yo says Bissouma can play football. He's not an Ndidi or Romeo. Yo-Yo, you're absolutely correct. I see a lot of people just kind of discount Bissouma as another Sissoko type DM. He's not. He can actually move the ball, but in Brighton's system, he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't actually, like, they do use him as primarily a destroyer and a ball winner, but the guy can actually play. And if you're looking for somebody with the close control that can progress the ball through dribbling and keep the ball, he's that guy. But he can also win you the ball. So, yeah, Bissouma is a Premier League level, like top 4 DM, and we don't have that in our squad. Karen says, do you think Arteta would want a player who doesn't have discipline? He's been proven he doesn't have any. Who doesn't have discipline? Bissouma? I mean, if you're saying that in regards to like his personal life, again, I don't know anything about his personal life. But in terms of like on the pitch, look at the cards that DMs get. Most central defensive midfielders have many more cards than anybody else. And that's not because they don't have discipline, it's because they often have to take one for the team. The only reason why Fernandinho and Fabinho and Rodri don't get the cards that everybody else does is because they're on the better teams, but they should probably have more yellow cards than anybody. That doesn't show a lack of discipline. It's the requirement of this position. And so if you're saying that Bissouma lacks discipline, I don't necessarily feel like it's that. I think it's the requirements of the job that he does on the pitch for Brighton. But if you're talking about his personal life, I can't speak to that. Sin says Gallagher bullied Xhaka like a child. Lynn says, I think the only concern is the MU situation with Greenwood. They're still paying his wages even though he's not playing. Maybe this is putting top clubs off a little bit. And this is why I say, like, I don't think Arsenal, or if this is the reason why, if they're waiting to see or put off by the situation, you do have to kind of wait until it's cleared up. But if he was cleared and there is no issue and he's proven innocent off of this whole this whole situation, then I don't see why we wouldn't want to go after him. Amir says innocent until proven guilty, but I would think that the fact that he has a potential assault court case would make Arteta question his character. And I completely understand that. Again, if they're not looking at him or not pushing forward with him because they feel like he might be guilty or whatever, fair enough. I'm not saying if he is, then we should go after him. That is not what I'm saying. I was just speaking off of if he was cleared of it and he was innocent, then yeah, he's somebody that I would go after. And the more overarching point that I'm trying to make is that we need somebody like this in our team, whether it's Bissouma or not. There you go. She Knows Football says what CC said. So let's go ahead and see what CC said. CC, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, congratulations on the growth of your channel. You've gone from strength to strength. I love your incisive, intelligent commentary. Keep up the great work. CC, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, the channel has grown a lot over the last couple of weeks, and it's all due to you guys and you guys sharing the content and coming, and visiting and being in the chat box and all that kind of stuff. So I do really appreciate it, and I just love chilling with you guys. Like, some of you guys are always in here. Yo-Yo, CC, S, Josh with an exclamation point, Blaze, Tony, who's not here weirdly, but usually is here. All of you guys, like, I just look forward to talking to you guys and just, shooting the shit. Like, it's so much fun. But thank you guys so much for all of your support, and we move, let's see. The Fab 19 says Bissouma or Ndidi. Bissouma, 100%. Sin says, I just don't see it happening. We are PRFC, remember? Cray says, nah, anyone can be accused of something that's not fair if he's found not guilty. That's just kind of how I am. And if you guys like what I'm going to say, may be a little bit controversial, but like, for me, of course, when victims of assault come forward, you have to take it serious and you have to take it to the full extent of the law, and do the full investigation, and you have to investigate any potential wrongdoing when it comes to like assault cases like this. But also being Black and being African American, I've seen, Black men be accused of things and it not be true. So on both ends, being a woman, it's really difficult, like, because I do feel like you need to take any accusation really seriously and investigate it. But equally, seeing how Black men are treated and how sometimes they get accused of things that they actually didn't do, I have to wait until they're proven guilty before I start treating them like it. So that's where the innocent until proven guilty comes in. I'm not saying that he can't be proven guilty, but I need it to be investigated first before I start calling him something that he may not be, because if he is accused of this, his life is over. He'll never recover. So I just want to make sure that, like, I wait first. Captain Joka says you can do a crime and still get the non-guilty verdict. He was caught on camera. He did it, end of. I gotta wait until it's actually proven. And I read something different. So again, because the reports are different, I don't know. I have to wait. Like, I just want to wait. But again, if he is, I don't want him at Arsenal, so I'm not saying I'm advocating for him or anything. Moving on, let's talk about Bellerin. Bellerin went on to Real Betis TV and said he's willing to do absolutely anything to stay at Betis. We all saw the pictures of him crying at the end of his loan. So he says, for now, I have to go back to Arsenal. I have spoken with the two clubs and I have made my position clear to them. I want to stay at Betis. I made an effort to come and I am willing to make an effort so that this continues to be my home. So it's pretty clear he doesn't want to come back, which is cool. I don't think very many of us want him back. But, Betis, I think, are having issues with his wages. And that's been an issue with some of our players over the years, is that it's been very difficult to get rid of them or move them on because their wages have been so high. And other teams like in La Liga and Serie A and the French league just don't have the ability to take on those level of wages. So I'm sure that, Bellerin I think he's hinting at the fact that he'll go down on his wages in order to stay. And that, if he wants to leave and he doesn't, he's willing to do anything, that's what it's going to take. Equally, Betis have to be willing to pay some sort of fee. And I don't know what it would take from an Arsenal perspective, but I think anything in and around 15 million would be perfectly suitable for somebody like Hector Bellerin. I'm sure they want to pay less. I'm sure they want to pay less, but 15 million for Hector Bellerin for where he is right now would probably be about right. What I have seen is that Betis have the money to potentially bring in Houssam Aouar, who's one of their top targets. And this kind of seems to be the same running theme over the last couple of years with Arsenal players is that they'll take them on the loan, but they won't want to take up the option, or they want a dry loan. And then they say that they don't have money for our players, but they end up spending money on others. It's really, really frustrating. It's happened with like Lucas Torreira. It looks like it might be happening with Hector Bellerin. Even like Xhaka. Roma had money to bring in other players, but didn't want to spend money on Granit. So it's a difficult one, but I do think he'll go permanently. I think Chris Wheatley said so very plainly, that him and Ainsley Maitland-Niles would go on a permanent, and he's already communicated to Arsenal that he doesn't want to come back. But don't be surprised if you see Hector Bellerin on the preseason tour, because it might take a minute for them to, they'll probably wait until the end of the window and then try to chuck us 10 million because they know we're probably desperate to move him on. So yeah, I mean, Bellerin wants to leave, but I don't think I would not expect him to be at Arsenal come the actual season start. Captain Joka says, we got Tomiyasu and Cedric. We don't need Bellerin. Newman says, Bellerin looks so 1970s. I'm sure that's the look that he's going for. Yo-Yo says, happy for Hecky B, found his level. Lynn says, I don't think Arteta will have a problem letting go, but his wages will have to be cut. I think that's what he's alluding to, is that I'm willing to make an effort. And so hopefully maybe him doing that will make it easier. Shaqzilla says, Bellerin 15 million, more like 5 million. Yeah, he's worth more than 5 million. Stunna G says, Bellerin looks like Eddie Guerrero. Seawalder says, I haven't followed Bellerin's performances at all at Betis. Anyone know how he's been this year? Could he be a backup for Arsenal? I don't think he's gotten any better. So if he hasn't gotten any better, he definitely can't play for Arsenal. And I just think from a physical perspective, him not having that burst of speed meant that unless his technical ability improved, he was never going to be good enough for Arsenal for what we need right now. And so I would say he hasn't gotten better, so he wouldn't be a good backup either. But you would have to ask somebody who's been watching him week in and week out. From what I have seen is he doesn't start every game either. So yeah, but this is his hometown club, and like he really has a connection to it. They even have like a GoFundMe to try to get the money for Hector Bellerin to stay. So I'm sure there'll be a way that they figure it out. But he'll have to come down off those wages. If he says Betis can keep him, we need that Molina lad. Yeah, he's pretty good, that guy. S says Maitland-Niles needs to stay. I don't care. Nah. Amira says, honestly, Hector's been so good for us, but his time is obviously up here. It would be nice for the club to help him move to his boyhood club where he's happy and has fallen in love with football. Again, JB says, I don't know what happens to us. Edu and the board need to fix this narrative with loan players. Lynn says, Jess, this is what you call business. We are naive when it comes to selling. Selling has been a very underwhelming part of Edu's it's been an underwhelming part of his time at Arsenal. He just hasn't been able to sell any of these players. And I see other teams selling their deadwood, and we can't seem to sell them at all. It's dry loans. It's loans with options, no obligations. Beyond Willock, when have we done anything like really decent in terms of selling? We pretty much given away every single player that we have. And so we're getting to the point now where we're far enough away from the pandemic to probably be able to recoup something. So with Bellerin, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Pablo Marie, Torreira, like we need to get fees for these players. We can't just give them away, because of course the team doesn't want to pay much for them, but you have to figure out a way to get them to. Karen says, I'm done with these clubs and they're penny pinching with our loan players. It's so frustrating. It's so freaking frustrating. S says we robbed Everton for Iwobi. That's pretty good, to be fair. I'm talking about within this hierarchy here. I'm not giving them credit for things that happened before they got here. So since they've been here, beyond Willock, I'm really trying to reach. Like, we sold Guendouzi for like 10 million. Who else, you guys? When we gave Aubameyang away, we gave Ozil away, we gave Mustafi away, we gave Socrates away, we let David Luiz go. Who have we sold beyond Willock? It's wild. Mavropanos, I know we got pennies for him. Yo-Yo says Adu practically gives players away. Willock's move was purely off his own performances at Newcastle. Yeah, I mean, this is a very underwhelming part of Adu's, time at Arsenal. And so he kind of has to, yeah, Willian let us off the hook. Yeah, we really need to figure it out. We really, really do. So yeah, let Sid Kolasinac go. I mean, we pretty much just let players go. And so I can't look at it. It's not just the pandemic and all this kind of stuff. It's literally he just doesn't have the ability. And so with Bellerin, I want to see some pennies come our way. Torreira. So Torreira, there's interest from Juventus in Torreira. Let's be honest. Juventus is a joke, and if they're interested in a dry loan or a swap. They're not going to pay us the 15 million or whatever for Torreira. And this is very similar to Bellerin. Fiorentina had Torreira with an option for 15 million, and they acted like they didn't get Vlahovic money. They can't afford it. They just cry broke all the time. And so we're stuck with Torreira as well. But Juventus being interested in him, I can only really see them offering the dry loan, which is so weird because they always need midfielders, but they have so many. But I can see like a dry loan or a swap. Would you guys be interested in a swap deal with any of their players? I know we're like desperate to bring Arthur Melo to Arsenal. Would you swap Torreira for Artur, or maybe McKinney? Could you guys see a potential swap deal? Would you guys be interested or no? George O'Brien says Juventus loves signing on a free and then selling them for money. Yeah, that's like their little thing. Lion says Juventus can go themselves. S says Artur is dusted. The Eddie says, Jess, I am into getting these players back. If we can't sell them, then we can focus on buying the other players we need. Jess, I am into getting these players back. If we can't sell them, then we can focus. Yeah, no, I hear that. Tope says they should get us Locatelli. Craze says I'd be interested in swapping Adu. Amir says if Adu was somewhat competent in his job, he would have blocked Juventus's numbers already. Juventus number already. I know, right? She Knows Football says, why do we have Eddie? Why do they have Kane? I mean, Kane came through the academy, or he came from our academy and then went into Tottenham's academy, and he just ended up being a really, really good player, So, and it's hard to buy those types of players when you're not at the top of the game. Like if Harry Kane was at Bayern Munich, Tottenham would never be able to buy him. It's just sometimes you have players come through your academy that are just so, so good. And what Tottenham did right is they blocked the move for Man City. They made sure he signed the new deal, blocked the move for Man City, and then brought in a manager that was up to the standard that Harry Kane would require. And then also the owners got the money to back the manager. Now at Arsenal, when we have players that are like world-class level players like Robin Van Persie or Cesc Fabregas that ask for some ambition, we just sell them away instead of doing the right thing. So instead of selling Robin Van Persie, what you do is you take some money and you spend it, and you make sure that there's better players in and around that player so you don't lose them. So that's essentially what happened. Um, Nothing we can do about it now, but move forward, you know? Yo-Yo says, I used to like Rabiot, but he never kicked on. Yeah, I know what you mean. Ivy says, Jess, why are the Italian clubs doing this to Arsenal? They never fulfill their part of the bargain. Uh, I don't know. I just think it's because Adu is not very good at his job. Because other clubs get things done, and it just seems like they love loaning our players dry loans and loans with options, but we can never get them to commit to an obligation, even though they love the players when they have them. Legume says, would deal with any club better before I deal with Juve. I get you. S says, Eddie is a class player. I've been saying it and will continue to say it. Eddie Nketiah? George O'Brien says, Arsenal said Kane was not good enough when he was in the academy. Um, yeah, I mean, to be fair, at that age, it's difficult to know, what's the only reason why we care is because we're crap right now, so I'm not going to go back and say like, well, at that time you should have been able to see that Harry Kane was class. Because usually our talent ID is pretty good when it comes to players in our academy. The reality is that you probably couldn't have predicted what Kane would have become, but because we're crap and we haven't been good for a long time, everything that we've done in the past, why did we do this? Why did we do that? Why did we do this? If we were good, it wouldn't matter. Nobody cared about Kane when we had prime Aubameyang. That's just how it goes, So last but not least, just to touch on a small rumor, I don't know whether like what the validity of this is, but apparently Porto and Newcastle are interested in Cedric. I know that this is such a funny picture for some reason. I don't know why it's making me laugh. Probably like right after he did a really terrible corner or something. But yeah, FC Porto and Newcastle are interested in Cedric. I know that the club said, or like Ornstein said that the club are pleased with what Cedric is doing, but I have to be honest, I am not pleased. And I would love to see us sell him, but ultimately, I think that would take some sort of sacrifice from Cedric, and he's never going to get 75K per week anywhere else. Maybe Newcastle, but at Porto, no. So it's kind of in his best interest to just kind of sit on his contract. He'll get some playing time here or there, give us a heart attack here or there, and just go about his merry ways. So, I mean, I'd love to see Cedric move on. I don't necessarily think that he will, but, that is I think that is a signing that we'll kind of talk about for a long time and how bad it really was. You know what I mean? Because Cedric, it hasn't been a good signing. Lynn says Chelsea said the same about Salah. I mean, it's hard to gauge. Like, and Salah, to their credit, Salah was like, or to our credit, Salah was older than Harry Kane was when Harry Kane left our academy. He left our academy when he was like a child. So it's very hard to tell. Dave Riley says, crazy idea keeping Eddie, need to focus on getting in a quality player. S says, I'd pay Porto for Celtic and Celtic to take Cedric. Neil says, Adu has a very hard job of getting rid of bad players to clubs that don't want them. If they were good, then teams would want them, but it's not the case. I want to believe that, but like, I think also just like the narrative around our team and our players are that they're really bad, and that kind of comes from the internet and all this kind of stuff. Like, you were never going to be able to sell Mustafi for money the way that he's been slated. So I get that they're not great players, but are they worth absolutely nothing? No. I think it's more about our desperation and need to sell them, and the fact that there's not a lot of suitors. But it's a combination of them not being that good. But I also think that if we had a better director of football that knew how to sell, because I have a hard time believing that you couldn't sell anybody for a fee. You know what I mean? So I hear what you're saying, though. Let's see. Amira says we should accept Newcastle's 50 million KT bid and send Cedric in a KT mask. I would love that. I would love that. Blackamus says, why hasn't it been good? I think was doing fine. He hasn't shined like Tommy, but he hasn't done as bad as Tavares or Marie. I mean, if our thing is, well, he hasn't been as bad as Tavares and Marie, think about how bad those two have been. And also the fact that Marie came from the second division in Spain and ended up in the Brazilian league, which isn't quite up to the standard. And Tavares is a 21-year-old that only had 20 first team appearances for like his first team before he came to Arsenal. The standards of those two players, like I didn't expect much from them. Cedric has been in the Premier League for 10 years and he was touted as this right back that could play left back as well, that had these great he was a great deliverer of the ball and he was an attacking fullback. He's 29 years old, but you don't really see that level of experience. You're not really getting that leadership. On the ball, he's not very good, and dead balls, he's not very good. Defensively, he's a liability. So I do think it's a questionable signing. We bought him, and I think he was injured, and he got a 4-year deal, I think with an option of another year on 75K per week. If the only requirement was for him to be just a little bit better than Tavares and Marie, then he shouldn't be on as much money, and he shouldn't. The marketing, the PR on him made him seem a lot better than what he was. So I think he's been, based on my expectations, he's not gotten close to them. Quite similarly to Willian, in my opinion, like in terms of what the expectation was and what I'm getting. I'm disappointed by what the reality of Cedric has been. Yo-Yo says, I just don't get the Nuno hate. He was a reserve for Benfica, and it was his first season in the Prem. You lot are toxic AF. Yeah, my thing about Nuno is he doesn't have very much experience. So what was your expectations of him? It was a punt, right? It was a punt. Yeah, and Cedric, sorry, we didn't buy him, but he was free. And I get that you shouldn't expect a lot for free signings, but with his experience in the league and how they spoke about him on dead balls and his deliveries and all that kind of stuff, I did expect more. The drop off from Tomiyasu to him is quite drastic, in my opinion. Lynn says, Cedric, I feel like he didn't get coached that well at Southampton, and since he has just come, he is just beginning to improve. Mikey says, Adu, some sort of mug, Nketiah trying to get a 5-year contract. I just can't cope. Amira says, Tommy and KT are at least at 7 out of 10 in bad games. That's what Cedric and Nuno are in their best games. Yes, they've done okay, but we need more going forward. Captain Joka says, Arsenal fans said KDB was better than Ozil because of the assists, but when you have forwards that don't score, how are you meant to get the numbers? People need to stop getting onto Cedric. Neil says, the narrative comes from how well, or in our case, how bad we do in the league. This prompts how much you can ask for your players. Our Deadwood are below average players. That's the reality. And what I will say is that I do think the narrative around the club does kind of set the level of what you can expect from sales of your players. Like Chelsea have some real dead wood, but they're able to sell that dead wood at good prices because I think the narrative around Chelsea is that they have good players, where the narrative around Arsenal is that they have bad players. So I do think that kind of informs clubs around what you can ask for a fee, and we don't get much, She Knows Football says he said he wants to finish his career here. I think you're talking about are you talking about Cedric, or who are you talking about? And She Knows Football says, Jess, we called it on this channel. The lack of investment replacement in Jan when Spurs were active would cost us. They can run your shows back, and you called Bruno G. It's archived for haters. Yeah, I can't even get into the Bruno G thing right now. You guys know I think he's a top quality player. And, it was funny. I was in a space not too long ago. Going in spaces are weird because it's like you can tell the people that are always in spaces that's just what they do. And they're like they love those spaces, you could just tell. And like, so I went in a space, this was kind of like after maybe the Spurs match or the Newcastle match. And they were talking about like players that they liked. And, I was talking about Bruno G and how we should have got him. And he's one of the most well-rounded, like young midfielders in the world or in Europe. And they like laughed at me and all this kind of stuff. And they were like, he's not that well-rounded. And he just is. Like, we have a lot of specialist midfielders for Arsenal. We don't have well-rounded midfielders. Like Jude Bellingham is well-rounded. It's hard to find those types of midfielders that can kind of do the two-way thing and be really good at all of it, because it's a new thing in football now. Like, for a while we went into specialists. That's why people like Jorginho are finding it difficult to cope, because they're specialized positions where people want players that can kind of do it all now. And so Bruno Guimaraes is one of those, and that's what I was kind of talking about. And they were laughing at me, and they tried to tell me that James Ward-Prowse was like way better than Bruno G, especially with his ball progression, and which is fundamentally, if you watch them play, is just a freaking joke to even say it. And I wonder, like, what do you guys think about James Ward-Prowse? Because I think he's just a solid player, but he's nothing special. But I think within the next 2 or 3 seasons, people will really see that Bruno Guimaraes' ceiling is very high. Do I think he'll be the next Kevin De Bruyne? No. But do I think we'll always kind of be looking at him as something that we missed out on? Absolutely. 30 million for somebody like him is a steal. And had they had waited it to the summer, they wouldn't have been able to get him. They wouldn't have. So yeah, it was just funny. But they tried to tell me that James Ward-Prowse was like better than him and also better at ball progression. And anybody who knows Bruno Guimaraes knows as a ball progressor, he's pretty elite. So there you go. But if you guys want to drop some questions, got about 10 more minutes. I know the game is going to come on, the Europa Conference League final, and we will see what Reece Nelson can do there, and probably watch a little bit of Tammy Abraham as well. So yeah, if you guys just want to do a couple of questions, if you don't, no worries, we could just get out of here now, but I always just want to open it up to you guys. Goose says, I think Ward-Prowse is a solid player, not amazing, but his free kicks and shot in general make people love him. Saida says, we'll look at Bruno G the way that we look at Conte when we decided to go for Xhaka instead. Yo-Yo says, James Ward-Prowse is a poor man's Juninho Leon. Ify says, I don't mind James Ward-Prowse at Arsenal. He's a very energetic player. Blaze says, really, Jess, who compares James Ward-Prowse to Bruno Guimaraes? I didn't. Like, it was just, that was their example of a really good ball progressor. And I was like, he's actually not, though. He keeps things ticking along. Bruno is a ball progressor. And then when I put up the statistics, they were like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. Abdul says, what position would strengthen in the transfer window? Like, what position would I? Seeing as we've already extended Elneny and Nketiah, I guess my things would be center forward. I'm more than happy with the Gabriel Jesus signing. I think we need a prolific wing forward, somebody that can give us 15 goals next season. So left wing, center forward, attacking 8, left fullback, and that at the very least. But I would be disappointed if we didn't get another central midfielder, but I don't think we would. Ify says Reece and Niles will be playing against you. I forgot Maitland-Niles was on Roma. I forgot, you guys. I did. Reece is my number 24, says she knows football. Thunder Road asked, did I attend an HBCU? No, I didn't. I went to Georgia State. Georgia State is in Atlanta. And so it's weird because, HBCUs are historically Black colleges and universities. But at the time, Georgia State was 30% Black, which is very high for a non-HBCU. So I didn't go to HBCU, but I went to a university that had a very large Black community. Sin says, have you seen Javier Serrano at Atletico, young top midfielder? No, but I will look him up. I haven't seen him. Black and Miss says Gakpo. You guys know how I feel about Gakpo. I'd love him. I just wonder about the acclimation to the league, but yeah, I really do like him. Lynn says, Bruno, I feel like will get frustrated with Newcastle because I think he was sold something that is going to take longer than he has been promised. I hope it takes longer than it's been promised. A lot of them feel like they'll finish above us next season. They feel like they're going to get a European spot. We'll see, because the likes of like Aston Villa and Leicester, they'll go again. They'll go again. They're going to spend quite a bit of money. And then, the likes of like Brighton, they're always improving. With a striker, Brighton are easily a top 8 team, if not top 6 with the way that they create chances. They just need somebody who can put it away. But so I think it'll be difficult for Newcastle, but I hope it takes them longer because we're in trouble. Neil says, we will go nowhere with Xhaka and Elneny in our team. They've been at the club for 5 years and still can't compete and move us on in the department. Proofs in the pudding. Yeah, it's annoying that they're still here. I can't lie. Yo-Yo says, question, your thoughts on company being linked with Burnley. Marco Rose never seems to stay anywhere long. Company being linked to Burnley, I think it's just a strange fit, but maybe they're looking to do something different because they did the Sean Dyche thing and it ran its course, right? And I don't know what Vincent Company is like as a coach or anything like that, and I won't pretend to know. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, he likes to play this way. I don't know. But I think it's interesting that like they went in a different direction and went with somebody like younger and unproven. We'll see how that works out for them. But I would imagine if you get rid of Sean Dyche, you want to do something different. And so that kind of speaks to that. Marco Rosa, that was a fail at Dortmund, and I thought it was going to be like a perfect fit. And it just hasn't worked out for him. So I don't know if he's going to go back to Borussia Mönchengladbach or what. But it just hasn't really worked out. And Borussia Mönchengladbach has had a terrible season as well. So maybe he needs to go back and then Dortmund can just do their own thing. But it didn't work out for him. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But I need Dortmund to be better next season. It's getting painful. Mikey says, would you take a War for 12 million over Tielemans? I have this feeling that Tielemans really wants to come to Arsenal because it's been like I think I read this before that he was an Arsenal fan. So I think him not wanting to come even without Europa League is probably something that the club really likes. The club has been speaking a lot around they want players that are passionate about Arsenal. And so they probably sounded out Gabriel Jesus and Tielemans and asked them, if we don't get into the Champions League, would you still want to come to Arsenal? And they probably said yes. And so we're pushing forward with those deals, regardless of where we finished. And I do think that that's important to get players that are excited about coming to Arsenal and are not just coming because we qualified for something. But I think Aouar never really wanted to come to Arsenal. I think it was clear that summer that he wanted to go to a team with Champions League and he was pushing for a move, and none of the teams that were getting into the Champions League could afford him because a loss wanted a lot of money and they couldn't afford it. And so I think he settled with us, and that's may have been why it never really materialized. And, his brother got involved and all that kind of stuff. But, as a, is that value for money? I do think so. But I do think we need to make sure that we bring in players that want to be at Arsenal and are not necessarily passionate, but want to be a part of it and are not just trying to force a move. Something stinks about the whole Aouar thing. And I rate him as a player. And in general, would I like to have a player of his quality in our team? Absolutely. But if it's 12 million for Aouar, but he really wanted to be somewhere else and, he's not really happy because we're not in Champions League and blah, 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 blah. Or Tielemans, who's an Arsenal fan and wants to come regardless and has quality, then I'm fine with Tielemans. I'm fine with Tielemans. Amira says, who would you take as a backup to Odegaard as the right 8? We played 4-4-2 without him. Don't see us changing the system for just one player. Who else in our current team can play there? Emil Smith-Rowe. I wouldn't buy anybody. I would start playing Emil Smith-Rowe there. You know, in like Europa League games and stuff like that. I do think Emil has done well in certain circumstances playing as a number 10. And if he can up his physicality and be more defensively aware, he could play as a number 8 off of the left or off of the right-hand side. So I would actually start playing Emil Smith-Rowe there. I think he'd be better there than in the wing, as long as he can kind of up his physicality. So yeah. All right, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here because the game is about to start, but this was so much fun. Thank you guys so much for all your support and joining me for the show. I will be back tomorrow for another daily download. Let's see how long I can keep this up. Let's see how long I can keep up this daily stuff, because it seems like you guys are really enjoying it. There's about 270 of you guys in here, so like the video and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys.